everyone. Welcome to another episode on the Good, Brave, and Heroic podcast. My name is Johanna, and I'm here with my husband, Eric.
Hi, guys.
Okay. Who will give you some form of greeting.
Some form of reading, you said?
Greeting.
Oh, some form of greeting. Greetings and salutations, everybody. What does salutations mean? You don't know?
Greetings.
Salutations. Oh, salud, maybe, yeah. Well, anyways.
So,
today we're talking about
something. We all talk about something.
Are you looking at the title like me last time?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. How to pray when you are feeling overwhelmed.
How to pray when you feel overwhelmed. You know what's the crazy thing? The last thing that you're going to go to typically when you're overwhelmed is prayer. And it's probably, or I'll say at least it's in the group of things that you desperately need when you're overwhelmed.
Speak for yourself. I am a holy woman of God. That's the first thing I do.
What about this morning?
Actually, this morning, the first thing I did was pray. You just didn't hear it.
Uh-huh.
But I simultaneously was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God.
So for me, I've kind of had to rewire my brain in a sense. And I'm still on that journey because when I'm overwhelmed, everything kind of just goes out of the window. Yeah. Like that's it. All faculties, all of my
last two standing brain cells.
Yeah, no. It's like SpongeBob searching for all of the files, and what's happening is that I'm searching for who I am and what I should do, and I can't find anything, and everything's on fire. And then all of a sudden I turn from SpongeBob into Elmo, and my hands raised, and I'm just in the fire, just trying to worship God.
Can you? I don't know if you're gonna have time for this edit, but can you include those?
Oh, yeah, I can include them as long as I remember.
Okay. And then we'll have to also tell Jawanza about it because that's one of his favorite.
Oh, yeah, that's a classic GIF. Yeah, like you have to stick with that. But so what I've had to do in like the rewiring that I'm referring to is that I've had to like teach myself like every single mini step, right? So instead of me going into my default, which we all kind of have like a default. We have default triggers, how we react to those triggers, what we go to try to make ourselves feel better. Instead of doing that, you have to intentionally pause and kind of like redirect yourself. So one of the things I was trying to do yesterday was like, what was a specific intention I could set for the day. And because I think very black and white, I had to not think black and white about the intention. It had to be an intention that I was aiming and striving towards for that day. And so all of those things are like really, really difficult to reconsider, and even to get yourself to a place where you feel calm enough to pray. You feel safe enough to pray. You feel encouraged enough to pray. Sometimes we have like certain rules and boundaries of what we think prayer looks like. And so whenever we feel like we're not meeting those standards, we won't even enter into prayer, even though we want to.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that was the full thought. Okay. So as you were talking, I was thinking about my own experiences when I'm overwhelmed. With this morning as an example, when there is like a crisis moment or some kind of emergency and you have to act at the same time, you're also impacted by what just happened. It's difficult, like you were explaining, it's difficult to just pull onto those grounding techniques,
Yeah.
or those, in this case, tools that will help you process or ask for help, aka prayer, it's difficult to just be so, it almost feels like you have to be very level-headed to be like, the responsible and mature thing is to pray now. It's just not, unless you are practicing that consistently, it's very difficult to do. And even when you are practicing that kind of grounding technique consistently, it's still hard to do. As someone who is a doer and who has dealt with crisis after crisis, I have only known to respond to crisis with doing, with solving. And I've become very good at that. Until I became a Christian, then I understood that, God always has the ultimate word. And I think that helped me to be confident in whatever I was doing. But even though I have practiced, like, okay, like your first response needs to be prayer rather than it be your last resort, it still is difficult. It is, because when you're like in the middle of something that's overwhelming, when it's overwhelming, you're not always fully there. You're not like in your right mind. You're not thinking thoroughly and smoothly. It's just, I feel like when you're overwhelmed, you almost become desperate. It's a mix of like desperation. Your mind goes blank, but at the same time, it's running 1,000 miles per hour.
Yeah.
Just like your emotions, they're running at 1,000 miles per hour, and you don't even know what exactly it is that you feel, but you feel an overwhelm of things. And I'm thinking back to a specific moment. I think it was last year or a year and a half, almost 2 years ago. I had like a situation that brought on a panic attack.
Mm-hmm.
And you were actually here to witness it. And thankfully you were trying to like help me through it. But even in you trying to help me through it, I myself had to like come to terms with what was happening and try to, like, you couldn't pull me out of it as much as you did whatever you did.
Mm-hmm.
And my mind was so flooded that I couldn't, like, I knew logically what I had to do, but I couldn't put the pieces together. Okay, now step one is, hey, God. I couldn't even say that. I was so overwhelmed by so much. Within that panic attack, I couldn't breathe. Like, there was just so much that was failing all at the same time that while logically I knew, hey, pray, I couldn't put two words together. Yeah. I know that you were praying for me. Mm-hmm. But I myself couldn't do it. And then that's a whole other thing, like the power of someone else praying for you when you're so overwhelmed because you can't do it for yourself. Until I finally came down to, while I was still in the panic attack, I came down to a moment where I actually just, I think without using words, almost like with my mind and with maybe my emotions, I was like pleading to God. I'm like looking up at him, like, help me. And at some point something shifted and the word of God started to come to my mind. A very specific verse started to come to mind that was very key and necessary in that moment. And then once that came to mind, I knew I was given the words to pray, and I could pray. And I started praying that verse over and over. And then I think I said, like, all I could eventually say was like, God help me, please. God help me, please. And that was my prayer. And I think that when we're overwhelmed or at any point, people think that they have to come up with this like elaborate, eloquent prayer. And sometimes it is just God help.
Yeah.
And it can just be that simple because, like I said, and like you said, when you're overwhelmed, there's just so much happening. And depending on the level of overwhelm, that you might not have it all to do a typical prayer that you might pray when things are calm and you've got candles on and you got worship music on. It's very different.
And that perfectly that perfectly describes what is something that is terribly wrong, for lack of a better way of saying it, about us as human beings. We idealize everything. We want things to look a certain way, to be a certain way. And if they aren't that way, we're so full of frustration that we lose sight of what it is that we wanted in the first place. Actually, earlier when you were talking about your mind racing, your mind is racing so quickly, and yet you can't even form a thought about what emotion you're trying to have. The picture that I had in my mind was of like a car. And when a car is driving really fast, you know, you're not going to be able to make out details on the side of the road. You're not going to be able to recall exactly how things were at certain mile markers or something like that because you're moving so fast. Yeah, if you see a huge billboard that you can't miss, you'll remember that. But details, trying to really find out about where you are is going to be really difficult. And so it made me also think about how, you see like in movies and in TV shows, the person that's like a perfectionist and they plan out a vacation and then the vacation doesn't go the way that they wanted it to go. Maybe they get to the hotel and there's nobody there to take up the bags. So that sets them behind on schedule. And now they missed the dolphin show that happened at 3 o'clock. But it's okay. We can still make it to the blank. But then on the way there, the baby blows out their diaper or something. And so now they can't make it. But that's okay because they're ready for the next thing, which is a mud bath. And so the baby can be cleaned there. So let's just go there early. But on the way there, they're hungry and all the kids are getting angry. So they say, you know what? Okay, we'll just skip the mud bath. Let's go eat. And your whole like schedule gets messed up. And it's very easy to, when you have a schedule, when you have an idealized form of what it is that you want, it's always easy for us to become frustrated when it doesn't look in the way that we thought it was going to be or the way we wanted it to be. When things don't go our way, we can be so full of frustration that we say, you know what, forget all of this. When it comes to our walk with Jesus, what we want is Jesus. What we want is God. What we want is his presence. What we seek is him. And I think we even can idealize our relationship with him. And when things don't go our way, we miss out on the moment we could have had with him in our overwhelm, when you can only say, please help me, God. We miss out on the joy of his presence because we think that the prayer needs to be perfect. We think that the circumstances, I do this all the time. For me, the most ideal circumstances for prayer are when I'm alone early in the morning before like the day starts and I feel like I'm in a whirlwind. Those are the ideal circumstances. Does that mean that those are the only circumstances I could pray in? God, I hope not. Right? And so we could apply that to so many different things in our life that we might be missing out on because we aren't achieving what we expect to be able to achieve within that given circumstance. And now we can't even enjoy the good things that are in the circumstances we have now because we're too focused on what we're missing. It's kind of like the 80-20 rule. It's never going to be 100. Yeah, you could trade your circumstance right now for someone else's. You're just going to inherit their 20. You might lose your 80. Are you willing to pay that price? Some people might be, and some people, if you take the time to really think about it and you look at the fact that the Lord says, this is your portion. This is the portion I've given you in this season. What will you do with it? And we can respond in anger, resentment, rebellion. We can turn our back to him. We could do like the semi disobedience thing, right? Where our hearts are for him, but we drag our feet. Or we could take it for what it is and say, okay, God, what do you want to do right now? Is that easy? No, it's not easy. It's hard. It's definitely hard.
So that just reminds me of I was thinking of some practical tools
That's good.
when
Okay, social worker. Let's go. Let's go.
for when we are overwhelmed. I know that back in the day before fancy iPhones, people used to be like, you should write down verses or write down things and post them around your house, on your mirror, wherever you'll see it. And I think those are still good for, if it works for you.
Yeah.
Those really never worked for me. But it's something similar. I think that from that last panic attack that I had, when God literally came in and saved me with giving me that verse that I hadn't read in a while, I was so grateful because I was like, oh, I don't need to have words. You have the words for me. And I think that's so crucial because when we don't have the words because we're so overwhelmed or we just don't know what to say, we can recite the Bible. So maybe that's typing in for me, I know that as a mom, as a parent, carrying a bunch of cute little notebooks and stuff, I just can't do it. I can't. Would I like to? Sure. But I can't. So it's just a lot easier for me to have everything on my phone. I take notes for everything on my phone. So maybe putting in your notes section like a file of in crisis or overwhelmed, whatever that is, so that you know that you click on it and you will find a list of verses that might help you. Or maybe it's not verses, maybe it's literal prayers that you write down when you are out of crisis or overwhelmed that you can maybe just say. And, hopefully you're not so overwhelmed that you can't,
Yeah.
Go into it. But that I think that would be helpful because I know that when I got that verse from God, I started to write it out and I started to pray it. And then that led me to be able to actually come out of whatever that was that I couldn't say a thing. And so, that also goes to show the importance of reading your Bible, right? Reading your word, that has the tools already in there for us. And, that was the one thing that I had thought of. And then of course there's also when you can't pray, tag someone in to pray for you. Thankfully you were there, but if you weren't there, I would have tagged you. I would have still sent a text or something like not okay, like something, anything.
Yeah.
Where you would know, okay, I gotta pray. Whatever, if you want to come up with a keyword or like an emoji, whatever it is. I know that moment was really helpful to me.
Yeah, and just like since we're talking like practical stuff, there's a lot of like supplementary things that we can do to just help with overwhelm in general. I think one of those is like making sure you're incorporating the general like health things, especially mentally. What gives you joy, having rest, going to the gym, getting some sun, all those things. But also at the same time, I wonder how many times we are the ones who create our own overwhelm. How many times are we the ones that we placed ourselves in the overwhelming situation because we're being stubborn, try to make something work that's not going to work.
Yeah.
Because we're not believing God for what he's saying he's going to do. Or whatever it is. You have to be honest enough to ask yourself, did I cause this? And if you're aware of that, so what do you need to do now? Maybe your prayer isn't, God, help me with this overwhelm. Maybe your prayer is, God, help me to not get myself here again. What do I need to do, God, so that I don't get here again? Here's what you need to do, my son, my daughter. And then maybe you can even avoid the overwhelm. So it's also about like just praying intentionally. The prayers that you pray before and after the overwhelm are equally important, because most people are going to experience overwhelm at varying degrees. The question then becomes, how are we going to deal with that? How are we going to get ourselves to a better place? One of the things that I know we strive for, and is so important to us, is to try to be the best we can be, both for each other and for our children. And it's like you have to have a why too. You have to have a why that you're aiming for. You have to have a reason why you want to get better, why you want to deal with your overwhelm better. And maybe in those moments where you are overwhelmed and you feel like you can't capture a thought, you can't do anything, maybe that why can ground you enough so that you can then reach out for the edge of his robe and just say, God, help me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, that image, I love that story, where I've always loved that story, because the woman that was bleeding for so long, I was able to identify with to a certain extent, because I had my own issues with anemia and menstruation. And it was very intense for me. Not that intense, but it was intense enough for me to be able to identify with her. And I could just imagine how she was physically feeling. She must have had no strength in her body.
Yeah.
To be out in whatever kind of hot weather that was, among so many people, to have to kind of fight her way through the crowd with no strength in her body. I mean, that's not what's written in the word, but I can imagine. I feel like you can put some things together.
Yeah, if you're bleeding.
And as a woman who's experienced issues with anemia and menstruation and not had the strength to make myself a tea, I can only imagine her. And to not only, maybe she didn't make it to say something to him because the crowd was too much. Maybe she didn't make it because she just didn't have the words, because she was so exhausted, or she didn't know what to say, or she was overwhelmed by the crowd or overwhelmed by her own emotions. But she knew that her action was going to be enough, and her belief was all that together was a prayer enough. Maybe internally, the word talks about how like our groans are enough.
Yeah.
To like when you have no words. Maybe that was it, and that was her prayer, that moment, and she just reaches and she touches him, and a miracle happens. And I always found that story so beautiful, because I think I have found myself in a situation like that so many times, where I don't have the words, but I'm that desperate, because I believe that wholeheartedly that Jesus is capable, more than capable, of saving me, of healing me, of protecting me, that all I have to do is look up, or all I have to do is reach out, or all I have to do is cry, and he responds. But when I know that my action is directed at him and I don't have the words, but my faith and my action are directed at him, I know that that's enough, and God responds. And that's always so healing for me. Even like we talked about this morning, so we keep talking about this morning and not saying what it is, but quickly, is it okay if I say it?
We just have to. We had a hard stop, and we're 2 minutes over.
Kaya woke up and she had a tick behind her ear while I was doing her hair. I noticed it, and
you said, "What? Get this out of here!"
I was like, "Nope, not today," and I took that thing out bare hands. But I did it, and we took action after that. And Eric was making fun of me because I was very overwhelmed and I was all over the place and just like, oh my God, Lyme disease and this and that. And yes, I was thinking those things and saying those things, but at the very same time, my initial internally, I knew I have to pray over my daughter and I have to pray. And so I do simultaneously have the same thoughts. Like I'll have these full of faith thoughts and prayers. Mm-hmm. And I also have, oh my God, what's going to happen? Oh my God, what do we like, whatever, the worrying. And before you come at me, it's normal. It happens.
Yeah.
But
if they're listening to this podcast, they're not the type of people that come at you.
But yeah, like I that's also how I operate with God. Like I vent all this stuff to God. I'm not just saying it just to say it. That's how I talk to God. I'm like, God, like I need to get this all out. Like I'm processing this with you. Like this is a lot, God. Like, and immediately when I saw it and I was taking it out, or right after I took it out, I said to God, God, when she was in my womb, you told me, you made a promise to me that, I was very bold. I was like, you made a promise to me that she would be protected. This is one of those moments, God.
Yeah.
This is one of those moments. So I'm expecting full protection.
Yeah.
And was I still worried? Yes. But yeah. I was calling out to these things, to God about these things, because I still believe that God is faithful, whether I have the words or not.
Yeah. It's you have the ability to hold both your worry and your cries to God in your hands. And I think that far too many people are afraid of bringing their hurt, their pain, the exact things we need to bring to God, their messiness to God, because they need to be formal. They need to be put together to be before him. But the woman that was bleeding for all those years, she had all the excuses to not do it. There's too many people. He's too far. I'm too weak.
I'm unclean.
I'm too dirty. I'm unclean, which is how they described it, right?
Yeah.
I can't do this. I would get yelled at.
Yeah.
All the reasons, but the edge of his robe was enough.
And
maybe
we need to,
the edge of his robe is enough for all of us. And we can bring our messiness to him. And he's ready to receive it. What were you going to say?
Maybe we need to rename the episode The Edge of His Robe.
The Edge of His Robe. It's a nice title, but people looking at it on YouTube would be like, what is this about? So guys, thank you so much for listening to today's episode. We hope that you enjoyed it. If you haven't done so already, make sure that you hit the subscribe button and make sure that you watch this video that's coming up on the screen. YouTube seems to think that it's a video that you'll like. We love you guys. Have an amazing week. Take it easy. Peace.